I've been thinking. I've touched on this thing about identity, right? It's no secret that I don't identify as an African American. And let me start by giving a few disclaimers before I go forward in this video. Black Americans who are descendants of slaves that identify as African American, I've long ago come to accept that that is your identity. And that it's merely to you a reflection, likely, and I don't know why you identify, but this is my guess, that while you have blood connections to the continent, which is the motherland Africa, you've either never been or have been a few times, but realize you were raised in the West. And that's a blending of those two different cultures, East and West, okay? Also, this is not a knock on people of black heritage from around the world, no matter where you come from. If you are black but are not a descendant of slaves, it's no secret that I consider myself an FBA. Okay? There's been many talks about this identity. So in the beginning of this video, I played for y'all something Trick Daddy said. He's not the first black person that is a descendant of slaves to say that. Raven Simone has also said the same. If you are a descendant of slaves in this country, then you understand. We are the Harlem Renaissance. Okay? We are the Gullah Geechee. We come from the beautiful waves of California during the Great Migration. Some people migrated out west. We did go out to manifest destiny, right? We are made up of Creoles. We are made up of jazz and soul and blues. We are uniquely a culture who created something. We are even soul food, despite the fact that we know what it does to our bodies. Me personally, other than the fried okra, I don't eat much of it anymore. Even fried chicken is like a 2-time-a-year thing for me, if that. Then we can't argue that we exactly created that culture, but the fried chicken, but that's another story for another day. I've touched on this, and I defended Raven Simone in a video I've made about the same thing. How she says she knows who her parents are from Louisiana, and she knows those roots. And lots of black Americans came for her, and I'd always taken her side and always admired that she doubled down. We all know Trick Daddy, in comparison to Raven Simone, is a very colorful character, right? He gonna say what he gonna say. What makes his admission to this interesting, because I myself don't identify as African American, is that now there is an increasing of us who are descendants of slaves that recognize that we have the blood of African heritage, but that we are culturally American and that we can't fully assimilate into African views because we were raised on this continent. Even in the age of knowledge where you can look up African culture and not so much explain, but understand it a little bit better, we are still on the outside looking in. Let's be honest, as a people, we're never going to fully agree on identity. We're just not. Some of us, particularly a lot of people of the older generation, will remain African American because that is the most common identity given to us. Some of us are FBAs. Some of us are ADOS. Some of us are Black Americans. Okay? So, in that sense, none of that's going to change. See, one of the reasons I call myself an FBA is because I embrace the fact that my blood is African. I never understood what it was like to hate being black. People assume I hated being black because there were points where I had friends of mostly other races, but I never hated being black. Okay. There was not a time when I hated that. However, I have no cultural ties to being African. Meaning I don't understand the culture. There are black Americans that go back and forth all of the time. And we're going to talk about the levels to this in a little bit, okay? But right now I'm just focused specifically on black Americans. But we're going to get to those levels. Especially given that I have my subscribers. This is more of a rant than anything. What is an African American really? Because anybody that's listening that knows foundational black Americans like Samuel L. Jackson, Denzel Washington, you know, the run of the mill that were born here on American soil, Oprah Winfrey, though I am not a fan. If something happened to the icons right now, and someone disrespected our black icons, that would be Viola Davis as well, then Aldous Hodge, who's up and coming, Michael B. Jordan. If anybody messes with, and Angela Bassett, Courtney Vance, and the list goes on and on of our people. We don't have the benefit of tribalism. None of us, if something happened to Courtney Vance and he was violated right now, we as a people have been so blended and mixed that when something happens like that, most black Americans, because that's the term I'll use here, since everybody identifies differently, are gonna come together and organize and march or protest it, even if you're a silent protester like myself, and make videos. We don't have the benefit of tribalism and saying, oh, I may not want to help that person because they're from this or that rival tribe. That's what sets us apart from the continent of Africa. Because of the circumstances in this land, we've had no choice but to work together on a lot of things. This is despite my misgivings against Black Lives Matter, and I'm not going to go into that because I've spoken on that, okay? And other organizations that are supposed to be for us but really aren't for us. But the organizing's going to happen. We don't have the benefit of tribalism and to turn someone away based on that. Now, if you are subscribed to my channel, you know who you are, right? Let's say you're Black American and your spouse is of African descent, either born in the United States to African parents or immigrated over later with African parents. What do we identify you as? Because you're not a descendant of slaves here in this land. If you were born in Afro-Puerto Rican or from the Dominican Republic or the islands in general, the Caribbean, if you were born there and immigrated here, what does that make you? Because by definition of this society, you can't be the label African American because that's the common label they put on you, and you come from the Caribbean anyway. And wouldn't a person who came from the continent, whether they were born there and came later, I shouldn't say whether, because if you were born to two African parents and you were born on American soil, that by definition makes you a Black American. You can never be foundational because you're not a descendant of slaves, but you are a Black American. But let's say that your parents were born on the continent and came later. Wouldn't that make them African American because they're from Africa? and they came here and got their green card and immigrated here legally. Because we know what FBA and ADOS is, right? And I bring this up because I have people subbed here who were born in the Caribbean and came over or born on United States territories as black people and came later. And see, that's a whole nother can of worms. See, Puerto Rico has Afro-Puerto Ricans, right? Those are black people. The U.S. Virgin Islands has black people, right? Wouldn't they be considered American citizens? And see, this is where the dichotomy hits. We didn't acquire Puerto Rico right away. We acquired it later on, as is the Virgin Islands. You can't exactly call them African Americans, right? Because they're not of the continent either for a couple of hundreds of years, because they also are the descendants of slaves. But they are not foundational either because they weren't born on physical American soil. How do we label those black people? People will say, well, what's in labels? And here's the thing. Reparations, I don't ever expect to happen in my lifetime, but that's one of the important factors of fleshing this out. It's not something I lose sleep over, but I don't knock foundational black Americans who are fighting for it, or ADOS people. What I'll say about Trick Daddy is, no matter how controversial you think he is, these are valid conversations to have, because if you're like me and you're born on this land, you are culturally American and all that entails, the good, the bad, and the ugly, right? But here's my closing argument. Whether you're a foundational black American, African American, black American, you came from the Caribbean, you came from Africa, you came from Europe, and you're black, you came from anywhere else in the world, you are Negrito from Asia, okay? I don't care where you came from. In this land, some stigma still exists. This doesn't mean we don't cooperate with other races of people, because again, I don't discriminate against people. I don't understand that hatred of other races. Never have, never will. But to be fair, I am a child born out of both slavery and Jim Crow. I never lived those experiences. I am merely the daughter of two parents and four grandparents. My last one passed in 2022, who are all the legacy of Jim Crow, but their parents were the legacy of slavery and going back. These are conversations that are hard about identity, but we have to have them because it divides. But it doesn't matter how you are black and became of this land. And despite the fact that I do have some ambivalence with some Africans more than anything that come here and disrespect us, I've been warmly received by people from the continent as well. In this land where this stigma exists because we have this color, can't some of us, and I'm not singing a kumbaya, not all of us have to come together, but can't some of us come together for a common goal? To build wealth, to cooperate with other races of people, and to just in general make things better for some black kids and be role models outside of the standard entertainment industry. Love, support each other. Understand and know our own identity while sharing the beauty of our culture with other cultures in this land. It's just something I've been thinking about. Identity will be there, and it is something that has to be discussed. There is no way to get around that conversation. And I'm happy that there's a element of my people, the foundational Black Americans, or if you call yourself ADOS, who are waking up to the fact that this is our culture. We've been here for 100 years. This is our land. The good, the bad, and the ugly. But let's hold on to our identity no matter what we label it, while moving forward to a hopefully prosperous future. Mangling that word for those of us who want it. Tell me what y'all think.